And of course, Kenyans are crying out in different parts of the country for assistance, it has not been forthcoming, especially in Tana River County. It has been hardest hit in matters flooding, with the administration raising the red flag, saying that over 64,000 people who have been displaced will require close to 6 months of relief food owing to the situation on the ground. And at this moment, I want to introduce Venant Ndighila, who's a manager, emergency operations and security, the Kenya Red Cross, and I'll be talking to him shortly. But before that, this is what's happening around the country. In terms of fatalities, we know that over 130 people have lost their lives because of floods in the country. Over 260,200 people have been displaced. Some of these, of course, information is from the UN. Over 205 schools have been damaged. And in terms of active cholera outbreaks, Isiolo County, Garissa, West Pokot, Turkana, and Meru are some of the hardest hit. As I mentioned earlier, Venant Ndighila is here with us in studio. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you.
Help us understand the situation so far. I've shown statistics. Sometimes statistics don't paint an accurate picture of what's going on. What have you seen? What have your teams reported concerning the situation on the ground in regards to floods?
Thank you. Yes, the statistics are relatively correct, as indicated. However, the situation is that we have children, women, pregnant women, we have the old, people who have been uprooted from their homes, and they have lost their shelter, they have lost their livelihoods. We have over 21,000 acres of cropland which has been destroyed. And these are the people who are mostly those of economically vulnerable, people who don't have alternative sources of livelihood, they don't have resources to seek alternative shelter, alternative source of basic essential life services. So the situation is very dire, as mentioned in Tana River and some 7 other counties along the Tana River and parts of the northeastern.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who really need support in terms of continuing with life as at now, and of course early recovery.
Okay. So in terms of Tana River and those 7 other counties, that's where you've received the most calls for assistance?
Yes.
Is that where you've really deployed your teams?
Correct. This is in terms of the way we have assessed in terms of the needs and in terms of the impacts and the affected people. And this is again Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, Taita Taveta, Kisumu. These are, you may want to see that some of them are very non-traditional flood areas. And therefore, the way the population coped with these effects this time, most of them have not experienced floods of this magnitude. Therefore, the effects have been massive, and most of them have been marooned. They have lost access to like foods. Even the commercial vendors of food cannot reach them. So these are, again, the most affected counties, although the whole country, we have at least 32 counties which have felt the impacts of floods one way or the other.
32 counties out of 47. That is a worrying statistic. Let's bring in someone who actually knows what's happening on the ground, our Sam Gituko, who's in Tana River County at this moment. And he's been covering this at least for the last 1 or 2 days. Sam, good morning. Where are you now exactly? And just tell us the situation over the night. Yesterday you had a conversation with Ann Kiguta and you gave her an update. Has that changed from what you were seeing yesterday?
Well, good morning, Mahiga. Still in Tana River, trying to access the situation on the ground. And yes, after the conversation we had with Anne yesterday, of course, we were talking about the situation that we could see on the ground in terms of humanitarian conditions that people are having to face. And for instance, when he spoke about the situation in the 2 villages, that is Hewani village and Wema village, which are up the stream of Tana River, once you go there, you get to understand what marooning means, because you can see those villages surrounded by the flooding waters. And as we were talking about yesterday, if you recall, Wahiga, is that for the residents, they don't feel very comfortable being advised to move out of those areas because they feel that the water is still far away to come and get them. But they are saying that even if the county government and even the Kenya Red Cross give them the warning that they need to move out, then it becomes a challenge, because for them they feel that they have nowhere else to go. And when you look at the Tana River County, you sort of start to agree with them, because the governor is saying that 70% of the population is affected by this menace. So where would those people who are already marooned, where are they supposed to be moving up to? Because this is a lowland county, and that means that the flooding waters are affecting basically a good chunk of the land that you have here. So it's a tricky situation for them to really get out of this. But as we continue to cover this, we're also experiencing the situation, the difficulties that the humanitarian organizations are facing in getting to reach those populations. For instance, yesterday we were at a camp by the name Minjili Camp. It's just by the side of the road. And what we saw is that there are about 875 persons who have been displaced. But from the persons that you spoke to, they tell us that there are still some people who are lying up about their status. They're not specifically affected. Their houses have not really been submerged, but now they're taking advantage of the situation there is. So they just come and tell the numbers and also benefit from where they really didn't fund, they didn't store. So it's what you may call ingenuine, or other people who want to take advantage of the system, but we're still trying to establish the actual numbers. According to the Kenya Red Cross, we are seeing a number of about, I believe it's 29,000 of people who have been displaced in Tana Delta sub-county alone. But of course, now talking about the entire county, the Tana River County, you're talking about 64,000 people who've been affected. Either they have been displaced or they have had their homes marooned, and now they are at the risk of facing, of course, what you may call humanitarian crisis, because they do not have access to food, they do not have access to places they can access that food.
Sam, let me interrupt you there. Of course, obviously, you spent a lot of time talking to the locals there. Have they ever have they seen flooding of this extent in the recent past? What are the experiences about flooding from the past, not just this particular incident?
I think Wahiga, the best example to respond to that question is from one story that we're being told that a village by the name Wema. As I said, Wema village is up the stream of Tana River, and there they have a story of 1961 flooding. I think that's the last time that they had such a situation. And the 1961 flooding moved them. They had left their places, but once they came back, they have never had to leave their homes. Excuse me, they have never had to leave their homes for places that are higher up. But now, how it looks is that if the rain continues, if the flood waters continue, then they may have to move. So talking about 1961 until now, I don't know where you were that time, but you can tell it's about nearly 60 years that they are having to face this. But also talking to the people who are at another camp, that is Bandi camp, that is in Gamba of Garsen sub-county, they were talking about some 4 years ago, they experienced such a situation, but they are saying even with El Nino of last year, they did not have such a situation, but it's of course affecting them. So it's becoming like a cycle, though they cannot predict that cycle, but it's happening more often for them. And of course, now you can imagine the situation and what it does to especially the young people who have to grow up going through such situations.
I think a vicious cycle, Sam, you've put it quite right, is the best way to describe it. What's the weather like right now at the moment where you are? Just give us an indication.
Well, it's a little cloudy. It's not raining, but you cannot be sure how it's going to turn out, because what you understand is that in the past few days it has been raining, especially in the morning hours, but now that is sort of changing, but also the flood waters are not changing. The levels are not going down, they are not going up, but they are hoping that there will be no more rain up the streams that have been flowing down to Tana River. But that you can only hope, because apparently the rest of the country is still experiencing rains, and you had that allegation, which you're yet to verify, that the waters that are affecting Tana River are coming from the 7 forks, which are up the stream. So if the rains continue, then the situation that is being experienced down here is likely to continue.
Sam Gituku, stay safe, stay dry, and of course, just keep reporting on what's happening there for Kenyans to know that there really is a very dire situation in Tana River, and you've talked about the Tana Delta and several other villages which are really going through a very tough time at this moment. We carry on with our discussion in Studio Venant. You've heard what Sam has to say. That corresponds with a lot of the feedback you're getting from your teams on the ground?
Yes, sure. The waters are really increasing, as we can see. Since the early March, we have had little rains, and the soils have been soaking water. But for the last 3 weeks, the rains have really increased, and they have been sustained. And this is beyond some of the earlier predictions, especially in those areas. So being lowlands, of course, and with the rains in the central islands of Kenya, we expect that, and the effects now in terms of direct effects to the population, we expect them to be the way he's saying. Now, in terms of, again, the picture, these waters have really affected the other essential life support services. For example, water and sanitation. Now, most of the Tana River County, they are not able to access water from their original sources. So we have to come in and provide water purification materials. We have set up water purification machines in some 2 places to provide drinking water and safe water. And also in terms of health, we have seen over 33 health centers have been rendered ineffective by this flood. So you expect now managing the normal ailments is a problem to most of these people. So we have to come in and support the existing health structures so that these people can be supported.
Challenges of disease outbreak, cholera?
Yes, so already as at now we have some 6 to 8 counties who are experiencing cholera outbreaks at now, and of course some diarrhea or waterborne related diseases. And this is expected, and again going forward we expect we need to do a lot of prevention efforts, a lot of educating the community, because those who have already cholera, it has a high risk of increasing. The other ones is about livelihoods again. The livelihoods, most of the people now have lost their livelihoods, and they will require support in terms of early recovery and mid to long term also support. That's why we released an appeal last week of 470 million.
Yes.
Yeah, which we expect to support those key areas. This is beyond life-saving. We expect to support provision of water, provision of sanitation support, and provision of health. And then, of course, support in terms of provision of seedlings, planting seeds, and restocking for those who have lost their livestock to some extent. We also expect to support refurbishment and rehabilitation of some of the destroyed households, and also some of the destroyed health facilities. Also support schools which have been interrupted one way or the other, in terms of ensuring the children continue with education, and then also help the schools recover from these effects as much as possible.
Fair enough. Shortly, I'll be taking a look at solutions, how other countries have come up with solutions to deal with flooding, especially countries that have flooding every year, and we have some rather interesting solutions. Those are some graphics. Let's have the first one up on the screen. So what some countries have done when it comes to deal with flooding, so they've improved the flood warning mechanism. They've made their homes and businesses flood resilient. They've constructed buildings above flood levels. And a lot of countries are also taking climate change very seriously, channeling resources towards that. And also on the same note, channeling resources towards flood defenses. And we've seen this in a lot of low-lying countries in Europe, etc. And restoring rivers to their natural courses. That's very interesting, because that's a conversation we've been talking about in Kenya. Let's take a look at some of the other ways. We need to protect our wetlands and introduce trees strategically. We need to introduce water storage areas. We need to improve our soil conditions. Also need to put up more flood barriers. And finally, common sense. We need to keep our sewer system clean. And I saw some interesting pictures yesterday, Venant. In some countries, they set up gardens on rooftops of buildings.
Yes.
So if you have a city like Nairobi and you just have gardens on every rooftop, a lot of the water is absorbed there before it drains. I've also seen they've made sort of porous sidewalks. So the water doesn't just flow on the sidewalk, it actually goes into the ground, etc. Let's talk about so some of them, I know some of you might be thinking far-fetched. We can't do those things in Kenya. Those are things that happen in Europe, etc. But what are some simple, low-hanging fruit in terms of solutions? Because honestly, I feel like we've had this discussion over and over again.
Yes, again, the challenge or the key factor here is managing the surface water flow. And these, the simple measures, simple planning and arrangements can be able to assist that, which includes, of course, water harvesting. But in terms of, for example, development plans, infrastructural development, this should take into account also the surface water flow, which will come in terms of rain. Again, you have talked about the drainage. The drainage is about culture, attitude, the way we manage our trash. This really, it goes and blocks the drainage. And of course now also managing in terms of cleaning, in terms of the towns and all that. So again, the surface water flow is comes also in terms of avoiding settling in the water, or rather the river valleys and or the rainwater valleys. We have seen sometimes buildings which have blocked these valleys. And again, we know water will come and pass there. Even if it is 100 years, the rainwater will come there. So it is about, again, putting all the measures. We might not go very technical, but managing the surface water flow. And of course, taking a minute and understanding the climate in terms of the change, in terms of the rains, and in terms of looking at the information, the predictions which are given by the meteorological people, coming to understanding and seeing how we can work with this information in terms of preventing this. So
one gets the feeling, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I need to ask this. Where's the government in all this? And we did a story which we're actually going to play right now. But one gets the feeling that Red Cross has really, gone ahead in this, but government bodies, in terms of national disaster management, for example, which in the past we have seen very vocal about this, right now we don't really feel their presence.
Yeah, Kenya Red Cross, of course, as a first response agency and, of course, auxiliary to the government, both national and local, we have continued to play our role. And, of course, we look at the disaster cycles in the country. And so we do some level of preparedness. This time, of course, the intensity of the rains was above what was predicted. Yes, we have continued also coordinating with the government. We have seen some government efforts in terms of provision of helicopter services, because these floods have caused a lot of challenges in accessing some of the far-flung areas. And we have also seen the government also providing some food here and there. But it's not about judging and saying this is the correct percentage. It is looking at the needs as at now. And as we have seen, the situation is very dire. A lot of people are outside there and they need this support. So it is about looking at what we need to do. So much has happened. A lot of coordination has happened in terms of the effort, but we still have to do more. We are still required to do more if we really have to do any meaningful support to those vulnerable families which are outside there.
Okay, let's play that report by Stephen Leto. It should be about disaster units, but it's actually more about disastrous rescue units. Let's look at where Kenya is failing and what needs to be done to sort that.
August 7, 2013. A huge fire engulfs Jomo Kenyatta International Airport's arrival unit. The emergency response is shambolic. What is described then as a farce, that such an important installation did not have a reliable emergency plan, will jolt President Kenyatta into action.
We have also overhauled our national disaster services, creating one coordinating agency to take charge during an incident such as this one.
And thus the National Disaster Management Unit was born. Government departments and international agencies came together to draw up the National Emergency Response Plan and standard operating procedures. The plan providing a clear leadership command for control and coordinated approach to disaster mitigation, prevention, preparedness, response and recovery. This will be the go-to guide in time of droughts, fires, floods, technological accidents, disease and epidemics. According to the plan establishing the National Disaster Management Unit, its roles will include coordinating disaster management, collection and dissemination of disaster information, establishing early warning systems as well as oversee emergency drills. Other roles include supervise county disaster officers, issue warnings, providing advice to citizens, hiring or procuring equipment for use during disaster operations. 4 years later, the floods disaster has hit the country. Cases of drowning, marooned and displaced Kenyans rising by the day. The unit, which is led by Francis Wanjohi as the director, is yet to show its worth. During the Huruma building tragedy, in which 40 people died, the unit rose to the occasion, with its former deputy director Pius Masai providing regular updates at the scene. He has since fallen out with senior officials who are said to have issued a gag order against him. The unit is yet to disseminate information regarding the raging floods as required by the disaster plan.
That the management of disaster response in our counties and by the national government itself has been the biggest disaster. And when they are meeting at the scene of the disaster, it is to argue, no, let my people are the ones with the capacity, wasting a lot of time where you could save lives.
The plan also sets out the roles of the National Disaster Operations Center, which had existed since 1998, shortly after the El Nino rains that swept parts of the country. Its roles include coordinating and controlling response efforts, acting as command center and liaising with responsible ministries. The man at the helm, Colonel Charles Owino, now seen to be sleeping on the job.
There are people who have been in under a river for almost 2 weeks. Nobody can handle that issue. It's because we are spread too thinly. It is time, and we must bite the bullet.
The two units fall under the Interior Ministry, which is under the leadership of Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i and Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho. The ministry's roles are spelled out as liaising with international agencies, as well as providing security for affected victims and in areas hit by disaster. In a statement this evening, the ministry has denied claims of inaction, insisting the Disaster Operations Center has worked with county government to help those in need, carrying out area reconnaissance and coordinating the supply of relief. It could not, however, say how many people have so far been reached. A building like that under construction next to Parliament is a disaster in waiting, and at the moment there is no a proper, well-coordinated authority to preempt that disaster should the building collapse. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Leto, for that report. Let's now take you to Kajiado County, Ongata Rongai. We all know that last week, over 7 people lost their lives, 11 swept away or died, 11 swept away in raging floods. This is along the river Kandisi at a bridge known as the Fatima South Bridge. Residents today have come out onto the streets in protest, and the hashtag they're using is Ifikie Uhuru. They want the national government, together with the county government, to do something about that particular situation. Let's now get an update from what's happening on the ground in regards to that protest from Laura Otieno. Laura, good morning. Has the protest started? What can you tell us about the demands of the residents there?
Well, a very good morning to you, Ahiga, back at the Communication Center. And indeed, as you said, we are in Kajiado County and specifically Ongata Rongai, where residents of this area, there's a residents organization known as the Cora. I'll let the residents speak, or the association themselves. Maybe what they're demonstrating about is the state of infrastructure and roads and bridges generally in this area, because as you said, as 5 people were swept by floods at River Kandisi about a few days ago. And so maybe I could just bring in first of all the vice chair to talk to us. Kindly tell us, are there any other moments that you have made any such complaints to maybe the county government or the national government?
Thank you, Laura, for this opportunity. My name is Liza, currently the vice chair of Cora. I think this has been our everyday call through other smaller associations, but even as Cora, we've had a similar walk to work. And our biggest highlight at that point, which was almost 2 years ago, was the roads. And as you have seen, and as there's evidence during this walk, nothing, to say the least, nothing has been done. Our roads have just become worse. They've become killer roads. The bridges are just taking away people. We are spending so many man hours on the road because of traffic. Recently, the last one where 8 people died and 11 are still unconfirmed, or rather 11 are still missing. That particular incident, guys went home at about 1 a.m. just waiting for the waters to go down. Most of those bridges don't have rails, as you have seen. So I think we are here as Cora just to make a statement and say Rongai is still in Kenya. We want services equals to the amount of tax we pay. As you have seen, it's evidence the activity, the economic activity in Rongai. That's all we are asking for, just for services to match the amount of tax we pay. We as a people are tired. We want to see the national government just do something. You've seen we don't have bridges, we have culverts. Basically, those are just what you put out of your gate and not on the road. So we just want to say enough is enough. As a people, we've put down our work today. We're not going to work. We want that statement out. We want, Mr. President, if you're listening to us, and I believe you are, we are tired. Enough is enough. You made a memorable campaign here. We supported you. This was primarily an ODM area. You got the votes. We now have a Jubilee governor. I think we need those funds down. We need to see your stamp down. I think that's really our important message today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe Wahiga, if I could get you a resident that maybe has been directly affected. Nani ni mkazi ambayo yaishi hapa? Pengine now aya, wacha tokea nao basi. Naomba utuambie kama hii situation ambao bridges zina overflow na maji yanakuja mpaka juu, naelezwa kwamba inakuwa ni shida sana kwa watoto kwenda shuleni. Je, umewahi kuona kisa kama hiki, ama wewe inakuathiri aje kama mkaaji?
Sijawahi ona. Nilikuwa mimi nafanya biashara, niko hapa Kesia. Sasa nilikuwa kwa biashara yangu yenyewe, nilichukua roni, nilikuwa na mwaga mtumba huko. Sasa saa ile nimeenda, nilikuwa ndani kwa maana ilinikuta ndani. Sasa maji hiyo woro ya Advent ikaanguka, hiyo maji ikakuja ilinikuta ndani. Nilianza kupiga nduru, niliona kama nimekufa. Ngapiga nduru na jaribu kusema haki nisaidie, mnisaidie. Sasa wengine walikuwa wananiambia mama toka, utachukuliwa na hiyo maji. Sasa kujaribu kutoka ngasindwa, kujaribu kufunga mlango efunguki, maji ni mingi. Sasa ngaona kifo. Sasa mzuri ngatoroka, ngawacha hata nilienda nyumbani bila viatu bila kitu. Sasa ngaanza kupiga nduru na napiga nduru na toroka. Sasa sijawahi iona tangu nianze kuishi hapa. Sasa sijui nitaanzia wapi, nitamalizia wapi. Hata hiyo nguo nimejaribu kuosha tangu Friday mpaka saa hii jaisa. Sijui kama nitauza.
Okay, well, that is one affected resident. Maybe if they could just move to the side like this, Wahiga, there is a bridge about 100 meters from where we are standing. Evidently, maybe if you could just, my cameraman would zoom in, you can see that I say there is a bridge, but there are no rails to indicate that there is a bridge there. So those are some of the concerns that the residents are raising, because we understand that the demonstration, or rather this mass action that they're hoping will get to the president, as the hashtag says, Ifikie Uhuru, is that they started at the Kwekwe Bridge, and now they're here at this bridge that is called Acacia, or rather the purported bridge, and they're going all the way to Kandisi, where the deaths occurred. So of course they're saying that they hope this mass action will at least raise some eyebrows, or rather bring some good attention from the relevant authorities, so that they prevent loss of lives and property in this area. Wahiga.
Indeed, Laura, we trust the authorities are watching and that they'll quickly move in and sort that situation, not just there, but in different parts of the country where we have seen similar incidents of flooding when it rains. Venant Ndingila, who's a manager, Emergency Ops and Security, Kenya Red Cross, I'll give you a chance to give us a final comment as we wrap up the discussion.
Thank you. Again, we have seen the situation, we have seen the impact, we have seen the effects, and sure, we can correctly tell you that the people who are really feeling the effects are those who are very economically vulnerable, those who don't have a voice to voice out this. And therefore, we have planned, as Kenya Red Cross, we floated the appeal, 470 million, initially to conduct life-saving efforts in support of those directly affected.
Do you have a challenge to the government? I know you said we shouldn't be pointing fingers, but do you have a challenge to the government with all this that's happening?
A challenge?
Yes. Would you challenge the government to do anything? Are you satisfied in your personal view?
Yes, the government and all the other agencies, we need to come out and support these people. We need to come out and do something and put more effort in terms of supporting all these affected. Again, I'll talk about these people need shelter. They are very exposed. The rains are continuing. Children are being rained on. We need to support these people in terms of their immediate health. They need water, clean water. They need to manage their sanitation. Now, a lot of pit latrines have been washed away and mixed with the other waters. We also need to support these people in terms of getting back to their feet
Yes.
after losing their houses,
long-term measures, exactly.
after losing their crops, their livestock, and their basic livelihoods. We need to trigger back their livelihoods by supporting them with materials, financial, and one way or the other.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I think I like the way you've put that beyond just what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, long-term, to over 260,000 people who need to start their lives afresh. What are we going to do about that? I think that's a good way to wrap up this discussion. That's Venant Dighila. He's a manager, emergency ops and security at the Kenya Red Cross, just giving us an idea of what's happening around the country in regards to flooding. Well, let's now take you to UniAfric House. That's in the Nairobi Central Business District, UASU offices, where a joint press conference is currently